General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
FM. We are continuing on our.
Do re-intro. Do it again.
Do it again? Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Trento Hour. I'm Susie Gold, and this is WNN 1470 AM, 96.9 FM, 95.3 FM. We are also on iHeartRadio. We are also on, if you go on theunitedwest.org, you could see us live. And we are continuing on our mission, which is to make America think again, as we are in a spiritual battle for America. We have a great guest today. Today is Tuesday, November 24th. We have a great guest today who will be coming on shortly. His name is Patrick Colbeck. You are going to want to hear from him. We're going to talk about the tampering of the election results via the Dominion software, so you don't want to miss that. But before we get to introduce Patrick Colbeck, Tom and I received a text message from Michelle Terrace. Michelle is the founder and president of JEXIT. JEXIT stands for Jewish People Exiting the Democrat Party. And she sent this, and we thought, Tom thought, it was very appropriate for us to read it to you this morning. So this is how she began. The world is upside down. Good is evil. Sin is virtue. Left is right. War is peace. A world where truth is trashed and lies are lauded, where the honorable are despised and the depraved are empowered, where sound morals and strong character are relentlessly mocked, while immorality is praised, paraded, and protected. Nothing is really as it is said to be. Bullying is perpetrated in the name of tolerance, when in actuality, it bears the hallmarks of history's despotic regimes. The foundations of Western society are undermined. The most intellectual, rational have become irrational. Terrorist causes are defended. Immigration laws, in order to curb rising kidnapping and murder, are branded as racist. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, Isaiah lamented. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. That's Isaiah 5:20-21. If the Bible calls something evil, this world calls it good. The longer that people fail to submit themselves to the righteousness of God, who is the one and only true lawgiver, who alone determines right from wrong, and the harder they work to establish their own righteousness, the more haywire this upside-down world will grow. We are in a spiritual battle for America. JEXIT. Together, we are stronger. So
Wow.
what did you think of that, Tom?
That's I'm reading a book here that is just enthralling. But I had to stop and listen to that at 9:08 in the morning here on WNN. That was pretty amazing.
Right? She said it all, and it's so true. It's down is up, up is down.
She woke up and had an inspiration to write that, and sounds like a biblical prophet or something. It was right on. So well done, Michelle Terrace.
Thank you, Michelle, for sending that.
But it was so good that it interrupted my reading.
Yeah.
I'm reading What am I reading?
What are you reading?
What am I reading?
What are you reading?
I am reading at 9:09 in the morning on the 24th of November, a couple of days until Thanksgiving. Tom Trento with Susie Gold, J. Mark. I'm reading a novel by our friend Ken Timmerman. We had him on recently. And the novel is called The Novel.
It's a
not
novel.
A true story. It's called The Election Heist. And as I'm reading it, I'm going, a novel? This is friggin' true.
What's happening?
This is true. He wrote this book a year ago, and it's a novel on how the Democrats were going to steal through fraudulent activity the 2020 election.
Look at that.
All right,
wow.
so get this straight, everybody. A year ago, Ken Timmerman, friend of ours, an investigative reporter, wrote a book, a novel, fiction, make-believe, on how the Democrats were going to...
Not true.
Not true. It's fiction. And it's turning out to be true. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Page 90. The next map color-coded the states and counties in various shades of reds and pinks and purples and blues. Now, here's the bad news. I'm in the middle of the book. These are the protagonists and antagonists. Now, here's the bad news. Our national election infrastructure is actually a patchwork of several thousand networks. It's a novel, but he uses facts to build his fake story, right? And this is true. There's several thousand patchwork networks. So there really isn't a national election infrastructure you can hack. You can't go to one place and hack all 50 states. In fact, in Florida, now I'm not reading the book, I'm commenting. In Florida, we have 18 counties out of 67 that use Dominion. And those counties, most of them went for Donald Trump. So each county has the right to come up with whatever they want, usually according to state law. I'm back to reading. It's all done at a state and county level, and each one has a different system, like 10,000 of them, Ken writes. Complicated, right? But that's also the good news for us, at least. These are the bad guys now. Some of these systems are relatively strong, those in the red. Some are pathetically weak, wide open to script kiddies can deal with. Blue. But red or blue, none of them are safe. Give me enough time. Give me enough resources. I guarantee you we flip the secret switch in and out with no fingerprints. Ha, 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 ha. There were so many exploits, so many entry points. The hardest thing that was deciding which one to attack. And not all the vulnerabilities involved machines. Some were baked into the behavioral pattern of hardcore Democrat voters, poll watchers, and election judges. Take Florida, for example.
Right.
Fiction.
Look at that.
Page 90. Take Florida, for example. All across the state, even in Republican counties, you've got Democrat snowbirds who'll be showing up to vote after they cast their absentee ballots in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Maryland. Aren't they afraid of getting caught? Nader said. Are you kidding? We made sure the state legislature never appropriated the funds the governor needs to earmark to link up to the ERIC system, which would allow the county boards to check their poll books against other states for duplicate votes. Besides, even if they made a positive match, they'd have to convene a grand jury and investigate each case individually. No one ever gets prosecuted. I mean, like never.
Never.
That's fiction.
Wow.
But this is not true, right, Tom?
The Election Heist,
right.
a novel by Ken Timmerman.
It's a fiction that really turns out to be nonfiction.
And he goes out to show how the Democrats steal the 2020 election. The guy's a prophet, let me tell you. Unbelievable.
Well, one of the good things about this whole book, Tom, is, one of the ways that the people get into these systems is by hooking them up to the internet. And they're not supposed to do that whatsoever. So I'm glad that at least not part of that book.
Yeah, then it's open. You can alter the results. And
well, yeah, as long as they're not hooked up to the
internet, you're not secure.
Well, yeah, they're not hooked up to the internet. That's one thing we do know about all these systems.
We know, obviously, that's absurd because
who would hook up a voting machine to the internet?
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
The voting machines are closed systems.
And because if you don't have that physical connection there, you can't really get into it. It's like unplugging your computer from the wall.
You can get in other ways, and he goes through it in the book.
But you would absolutely never hook these things up to the internet.
Yeah, we know That's a joke, because our next guest, when he comes,
Yeah, wait, he's going to shed light on
is
all
Patrick
of this.
here?
Because he wrote, okay, so Patrick,
Is he
who's
with
coming
us?
on
No, he's not with us.
shortly,
Oh, okay.
he wrote an article, Dominion Voting Systems Unwrapped. And I have a quote from him. If a computer is connected to the internet, all resources on that computer, including voting data, is vulnerable to remote manipulation.
Duh.
We know that.
No, but as long as they're not, that's the key point. So we're secure on that.
All right, before we get to our guest, who's coming in a little bit, I got to tell you, I found a way. Look, we need money. The United West needs money.
We need money.
We are
desperately.
a donor-funded organization. All of this stuff comes to you through donations to us. Then we're able to do our work. We are focusing in on Georgia for the next 42 days, and critically important. Go to our website, please, theunitedwest.org. There's going to be a warning typically for some of you, depending on who your internet provider is, saying, get out of here. You don't want to go in there. You don't want to go in there. Nothing is wrong. Mark, is there anything wrong with our website?
No, we did a full security audit, full security check. I contacted everybody in the world, and Comcast all said, no, it's just some legacy thing that's out there. It shouldn't be there. Everything's fine.
All right. So there's nothing wrong with our website. So go there. You can make a donation. But I see that
we do have our
see
guest.
our guest
He's
is
here.
here.
I was texting, not to be rude, but I just wanted to make sure Patrick had the information, because I don't make any money, but I really take this job very seriously.
So I
That's
had
right.
it down. I had us down for 9:15. Did I mess up there?
No, you're
right
fine.
there,
You're fine. It's just my type A personality.
I'll introduce Patrick. Patrick is a great guy. We've had involvement with him through the years, through the United West, some of our folks in the formerly great state of Michigan. I guess it's still a great state up there, but a lot of people moving to Florida from Michigan. When are you coming down, Patrick?
Yeah.
You moving to Florida?
Well, actually, we were down there for about a year after we got married. We're living in Orlando. My sister's there right now. As a matter of fact, I told her to make sure she's listening to the show.
Oh, good. She can go on theunitedwest.org and she could see us.
She could watch on theunitedwest.org. We're streaming live.
Our iHeartRadio.
But Patrick Colbeck is by training and education an aerospace engineer. I still don't understand how things stay up in the air when I'm flying in an airplane.
It's still magic to me.
How does
that happen?
I'm a pilot, and I don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
Well, I focused on space systems. Once you get spinning around there, there's
no
nothing.
air.
It's not difficult. Yeah.
He is a formerly elected official in Michigan. He ran in 2018 for the governorship on the Republican side.
Yeah.
Born in Dearborn, Michigan. Too bad. Born in
Sorry to hear
Dearborn.
that, bud. Yeah.
And he was 2 terms in the Michigan Senate, representing the infamous northwest portion of Wayne County. But some of our folks, Dick Manasiri and the late Philip Haney, still a complex situation there.
Don't go there.
Worked with Patrick, briefed him, and Philip was one of the founding members of Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security. Phenomenal investigative official, law enforcement
Good
officer.
man, too.
Yeah.
And Patrick was briefed on the Islamic influence in the United States and took a position on it and was attacked, just like we have been through the years. But that's what happens when you stand on the truth, and the truth is uncomfortable. That happens. And now you're in the middle of this controversy in the infamous Wayne County. What we want to do this morning, Patrick, is get your story and then see by application how it relates to the United States in particular, but in specifically the United West. For 2 years, we ran a campaign to mobilize 1,000,001 evangelicals and politically conservative Jews to get Trump elected. We succeeded. We got Trump elected in this state by about 400,000 votes out of 11 million votes cast. Significant victory.
Yeah.
But now we're focusing on Georgia, and we're very concerned that the problems you ran into could pop up in Georgia or some other similar problem with the systems. You have Give us your background on computers, and then tell us your story.
All right. Well, first of all, I never thought I'd be back into the mix on politics. Frankly, I was so happy to get out of the Lansing, Michigan when I was done. It literally is a swamp up there. And I wrote a book called Wrestling Gators for a reason. It was not a lot of fun, but you know what? If good people don't get engaged, this is what we get. And we're seeing that at all levels of our government right now, except for the presidency, I might add. I think Donald Trump's been doing a stellar job, and it feels like sometimes when I look at him, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And so please keep him in your prayers. So my background is, you guys pretty well summarized it. I mean, my background's pretty technical. So the idea that I decided to run for office is a little bit of a, what doesn't go with the other discussion right there as it is. But when I was in office, one of the things that I really focused on was getting a detailed process understanding of, among other things, the elections. And I was vice chair of the Senate Elections and Government Reform Committee. And I took my duties seriously. And I went through the whole Michigan elections manual, through our law, sat down with our clerks, and I mapped out every step.
Now, what year, Patrick, what year is this?
This is back in 2014. And so in the wake of the 2016 election, I was the one calling our AG and our Secretary of State, to investigate. And this is one where Donald Trump won, right? So it's not like I'm sitting there trying to pick winners and losers on this. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with election integrity. I had a staffer who was at Detroit back in 2016. They were doing the recount, and she was the one where the precinct she was at had 306 votes on the poll book on the outside, saying 306 people had voted. But when she went inside the actual machine, there was only 50 ballots. And it said something's wrong here. And why that's important? Because if there's not a match, there's no recount. So I'm a process guy from the beginning. So when it came to this last election, I volunteered to be a poll challenger, and I was out at the Detroit Absentee Voter County Board, and I was there
as an unelected official. You're not an elected official anymore.
Unelected. It was just, I said, my oath to the Constitution hadn't expired, so I got to go off there and make sure that we protect this election. And I wanted to get to the bottom of it. When you're an elected official, you're not allowed to go in and observe the elections, right? I can't be a poll challenger or a poll worker from an elected official. Well, I'm not anymore, so I can go off and check into this. And what I saw was direct subversion of our election. And we've got around 200 affidavits on the Detroit AV Counting Board alone of attempts to subvert the integrity of the election. So I've been on the ground there. I've been on the ground at the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, you may have heard about, where we had threats to the canvassers that had an influence on them changing their vote to certify. So all kinds of stuff right in the center of all of it. And bottom line is, this election was stolen, and we're putting together all the pieces at the highest level to identify exactly how that was done. I want to thank the people in Florida for doing your job. You've been through all this drama before back in 2000. I know you don't want to go through it again. Well, guess who didn't learn from that lesson? The people of Michigan. We're gonna figure it out this time, though.
All right, I want to walk through this. That's Patrick's opening statement at 9:22 in the morning. Tom Trento, your host, WNN 1470 95.3, iHeartRadio worldwide. Take us with you. Go to iHeart, download WWNN 1470 AM, South Florida. You click it wherever you go, internet signal. We're always with you. Take us in your pocket, put us on your phone. And if you want to sit at home or not driving in your car, but if you're somewhere else, theunitedwest.org, you can watch the live stream of this. We actually produce a television show with guests and B-roll and all of that. And we're simulcast on a 50,000 watt station covering 5-6 million people from Miami all the way north past Palm Beach, all the way up there. Critical section of the state of Florida. Patrick Colbeck, our special guest, former elected official in Michigan, said, I'm going to do my civic duty and go and just help out and watch and have a nice day.
Right.
And he got thrown into an alligator swamp like you can't believe. Walk us through. I want the listeners and viewers to feel what you felt when you walked into the room And describe the room, describe what your job was, and describe that moment you saw wires. Wires that you had to follow.
But Tom, we were talking just before that, Patrick. I'm a network engineer, Cisco network engineer, and
this is Mark.
I am really, what I heard up there out of Michigan is I'm just so happy that these were secure systems, that they were isolated systems, that they obviously you wouldn't hook them up to the internet. I mean, that'd be silly. That'd be silly. That would be silly.
Crazy talk. Yeah.
Crazy talk. Anyway, well, go ahead and walk us through the room then.
All right. So the Detroit AV Counting Board takes place at the used to be called Cobo Hall. It's a TCF center out in middle of Detroit, and a huge room. Inside of it, there's 134 AV counting boards, and Detroit does something a little bit different than everybody else. Because they have so many precincts, they got about 503 precincts. They divide them up into groups of precincts, and they're called counting boards. And so these stations are spread out all over the place. They've all got laptops associated with them that provide electronic poll books. And I'll get into why that's important a little bit later. In the middle, you had a nice little bay of tabulators, or a whole row of tabulator machines, which are essentially high-speed scanners connected to a workstation. And then you had a series of adjudicators, which is when a ballot couldn't be read at the tabulator, it got flagged and then spit out to the adjudicator, where you'd have ostensibly a Republican and a Democrat deciding what the actual vote was. And then they'd finalize it and then ship it. And in the center was a local data center control, if you will. It was a command and control station for all the operations for the absentee voter count in the state of Michigan. And as a former state elected official, I knew a few of the people that were walking around. I was from Wayne County. These are folks that I knew from my experience in Wayne County. And one of the people that I approached initially when I went into the counting board was a gentleman by the name of Chris Thomas. Chris Thomas was former state elections director for the state of Michigan for decades. He was the state elections director under our Republican Secretary of State, Ruth Johnson. I mentioned that I like to diagram out all those processes. Well, he was the guy that I sat down with, and I said, where am I wrong on these processes? And he actually said, actually reviewing these processes, I actually learned a lot from you reviewing these processes. So I'm sitting there talking to him, and I said, first question I had, because everybody else is going to be focused on the individual ballots and individual tallies, if you will. I wanted to focus on the big picture. I wanted to get to the heart of Stalin's statement, if you will. It's like, I don't care about who votes. I care about who counts the votes. And so my first question to Chris Thomas was, please walk me through how you're maintaining the chain of custody between the tabulator machines and all points north of that, like you're reporting out to the counties, et cetera. And so how are you doing that? And because I wanted to know, is he doing it electronically via network connections? Is he doing it by downloading it to a flash drive at the end of the night and then walking it over to the clerk's office or whatever in a sealed envelope? I wanted to know exactly how he's planning on doing that. And this elections official, state elections director for over 2 decades said, I don't know. I go, okay.
Oh my God.
So I played the proverbial kid on his way down to Florida going to Disney World. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? All night long, right? And I kept saying, all right, do you know now? And he goes, yeah, I'll find out for you. I'll find out for you. And finally, he just said at the end of the night, he goes, before he took off on his shift, he said, you know what? I'm not going to tell you until after all the operations are done tomorrow. And I go, okay, red flag. So I went through and I started looking at all the connections of all the computers, and the poll books or the electronic poll books at the 134 counting stations, there was no discernible network connection at all for them. However, there were Wi-Fi routers all over the place, and I took a snapshot of all the hotspots that we had in the place. And one of the hotspots is called AV_connect. So AV as an absentee voter, or some guy named Ari Vosh. I don't know, but So we saw no discernible connection with the poll books, which is good, but there's evidence that some of them were connected later on. But so I started looking at the tabulators, and the tabulators, of course, there's this bay of like dozens of tabulators, and they're all connected via Ethernet connections, and they're all connected to routers. These routers are connected to routers that connect them to the adjudicator machines.
Now, wait, hang on, Patrick, hang on 1 second.
Oh my God.
You got up from your seat. What was your job when you were sitting down at your seat?
Well, I never sat down the whole night. I was the like the monster back in football. You know, everybody else has their specific assignments. I'm just following the ball. All right.
All right. So now you start walking around the place, going behind machines, looking at things.
Well, no, actually, I can't say going behind machines because they actually had a little fortress around there. And because of COVID, I couldn't get within 6 feet of anybody, right? So anytime you did that, it was like I have the pox, you know, it's like a leper walking down the street in Jerusalem, right? So it was, so around the adjudicators actually surrounded this local data center, which is the brain trust of the operation. Well, I noticed that all these network connections led to a router underneath the data center stage that was up there. And that in turn was connected to what was obviously a connection to, it was an Ethernet connection to the wall that was probably the main internet connection for the facility. So anybody who knows IT knows that if one computer on that network is connected to the internet, they're all connected to the internet.
Absolutely.
And so I asked elected officials throughout that night, I go, do me a favor. And there's one guy I used to serve with by the name of David Nathan. He's a former state representative. And I asked him, David, are these connected to the internet? And he said, no. And I go, well, you may have been lied to. So do me a favor, just move that mouse cursor over the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and it'll tell you explicitly connected to internet or not. All right, it's that little icon there, bottom right, looks like a little Windows terminal with a little Ethernet connection popping up on the left-hand side. And he says, no, you're just gonna have to trust me. And I go, sorry, man, I don't trust you. And especially, why would you even hide that? That's not gonna interfere with any of the operations of the election. It could have dismissed this whole concept of being connected to the internet once and for all, and he refused to do it.
Wow.
So why is this a big concern, right? Why is being connected to the internet a big deal at all? Well, I'll tell you, this is the way it usually happens when you send out vote tallies in almost every single other district inside the state of Michigan. You remember the little bars that you see up on CNN and all those other news stations at this, I guess I'm using that term loosely in context of CNN,
Yeah.
but the idea of having a bar up on the bottom that says percentage of precincts reporting.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, that's supposed to mean something. That means that, hey, you know, precinct 1 just finished their tabulation. They balanced their books. They sealed up the results, put it in a little flash drive, and sent it up to the clerk's office. And then the clerks reported it up to all points north, like the county and state, et cetera. But it's only at the end of balancing the results and making sure you got something that's accurate, you put it up on the flash drive and you seal it, and you physically walk it from point A to point B in a sealed envelope. That's not what happened in Detroit. There was never any sealed envelope. They were getting real-time data reports, ostensibly from data pulled directly from these tabulator machines. And so there's no chain of custody. I as a poll challenger, I'm there to observe all the election processes. I can see it when they put a flash drive into an envelope and seal it and walk it over. I can verify chain of custody there. When they put this on the internet, and you can hack into any network like that within seconds with the right tools. And if you're inside that network, you can play with database errors. And guess what happened inside of Detroit? And you all heard about what happened up in Antrim County, right? The flipping of 6,000 votes. If it wasn't
Right.
for wasn't for an alert voter, this was an elected official that identified as good man by the name of Bill Bailey. I've been working with quite a bit. He identified this. He saw the final vote tally in a smaller county like Antrim, and he goes, that's kind of weird for 22,000 votes. It was easy to identify. In a city like Detroit, where we were counting 172,000 absentee votes just in that one location alone, it's very difficult to trace these vote tallies as they go through, especially if you're hiding them by just Ethernet connections inside the wire. As observant as I am, I can't go off and follow an electron through an Ethernet cable, right? And so that's a concern. So anytime you do that, you not only risk a breach from the people with nefarious purpose, but you also block folks like myself who are just trying to ensure the integrity of the election from monitoring exactly how that vote tally is being transferred from point A to point B. So it all boils down to chain of custody, folks. If you can't maintain chain of custody, you can't maintain the integrity of the election. And I've got if you go to my website at letsfixstuff.org, I go into what do we mean by chain of custody. I mean, it's like a bad CSI episode is what it comes down to. But on there, if you break any link in that chain of custody, you have subverted the integrity of the election. And I can tell you, I have evidence, and we have affidavits attesting the breakage of pretty much every single link in the chain of custody in the case of Detroit alone.
Wow.
All right. Well, there's a series of questions we have here. First of all, there's the question of the technical way, forensically, someone that if this thing is connected to the internet, how someone can tweak the numbers and change them. Is that theoretically possible?
Yeah, it's actually by design in the Dominion voting system. It's actually a feature. It's not a bug, according to them.
It's a feature.
That's a feature. Oh, good. That's a good feature to have on a voting system. Yeah.
You know, and made in Venezuela, right? It's a feature.
Yeah, if you go to that's another posting on the website. It's a separate one. It's called Dominion Voting Unwrapped. And also a good gentleman by the name of Joe Oltman's got a lot of information on this as well. He's been one of the early whistleblowers on what's going on with Dominion and Eric Coomer in particular. And by the way, I don't think this is just limited to Dominion, by the way. They all use kind of a common back-end set of source code and a lot of these different vendors. So I guess we can lean on Dominion because of all their ties to Act Blue and a bunch of other folks. But ultimately, this comes down to flipping the data in a SQL database. And we saw error messages popping up on that were related to like backup overflow, which is a SQL Server database.
Yep.
Error. And unless those tabulator workstations had SQL Server installed on them, that alone is evidence that they're connected to something else.
Exactly.
You're going over the heads of the
Sorry about
average,
that.
radio person like me.
SQL stands for software query language. No, sorry about that.
That's okay. I mean, we're glad we got guys like you in place. Before you came on, we were joking a little bit. Ken Timmerman, I don't know if you know Ken Timmerman.
No.
Investigative reporter, friend of ours. He's on our show pretty often. A year ago, he wrote a novel entitled The Election Heist. And it's a novel on how the Democrats were going to steal the 2020 election using Dominion and other software. Turned out to be true, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the deal. Here, a couple of questions. If I'm interrogating you, I would say,
come on, bring it.
Well, first
We're
of all,
it's going to be the next few weeks anyway of my life, so I may as well get ready.
First of all, Mr. Colbeck, you cannot verify for sure that was connected to the internet. You have absolutely no prima facie evidence. True or false?
False. That's why I got everybody to walk around with me and observe that little icon in the bottom right-hand corner on all those tabulator and adjudicator terminals.
But you had said the one individual wouldn't show you that.
He wouldn't show it because I wanted him to admit that they were connected to the internet.
Oh, so what did you do? You went around and
I can't touch anything as a poll challenger. I can't touch it at all, but I can look. And I went up to all the monitors. And if you guys are on Windows PCs right now, you look in that bottom right-hand corner, there's this little picture of an icon of a monitor with a little Ethernet cable next to it. When you're not connected to the internet, it shows a different icon. If you're connected to the internet, it shows that icon. At the very least, it's LAN connectivity. There's a lag. It gets a little bit technical, but it's suffice to say, pretty dang good evidence that they're connected to the internet.
Okay, so now, how did you record that evidence? Did you take pictures?
No, we're not allowed to take pictures. We did have some folks take some pictures, of course, conveniently. And here's a big problem we have with our side. We're such goody two shoes. If they say don't do something, we don't do something, whether or not it's lawful or not. We just sit there and go, okay, we're gonna go along. And frankly, if I would have done it, I would have gotten kicked out, and I wouldn't be able to observe some of the other stuff that I found out. So you kind of rolls your dice, you take your chances, and you focus in on. I always default to following the rules.
Right.
And we have a lot of people that were doing that, and but not everybody did. So we do have some photos of the Ethernet cables. They're not the best investigative journalism photos that I'd like to share, but they at least highlight that these guys were connected via the Ethernet, via Ethernet connection.
Okay. All right. So you could make a sufficient circumstantial case that it was connected to the internet. Now, walk us through on a simple.
Well, I want to back up.
Hang on. A simple explanation. Walk us through how somebody would actually change the numbers, and it couldn't be verified by a hand recount of the ballots that showed that the numbers were changed.
There's a whole lot of mechanisms that go into this, and some of this we're putting together a court case for it right now, and I don't want to give these guys a heads up, if you know what I mean. But suffice to say, there's an element of this that does with your setup. So they do something called a public accuracy test beforehand, that each of these tabulators are calibrated, if you will, to read a certain set of permutations. And when you're done with all these different permutations of ballots, it spits out a tally that's supposed to be accurate. All right. So that's the way you calibrate your scanner, if you will. Well, we have reason to believe that they're leaving out some critical subsets of those test runs, if you will, that hide specific circumstances that they leverage to go off and flip votes.
Oh boy.
And that's kind of at the heart of it. So part of this is this public accuracy test before, which we were not invited to, by the way, as a poll challenger, which is another point of contention. We had people on the ground asking for when this would be, but COVID was used as an excuse to say, no, we can't gather together on any of this. We can show it to you via Zoom if you'd like, all this kind of garbage. So that is the first thing. After the fact, like I said, this is just a SQL data. This is just a database. Sorry, SQL database. This is just a database that anybody who knows where the database is can, or what to look for in a database, can go in there and adjust the fields. This
Unbelievable.
Cheating.
Tom,
Cheating.
Well, hang on, Mark.
You guys saw Ferris Bueller, right?
I have a really important question.
Let me just put
our
this in.
guest is talking.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just put it in context. You guys all saw Ferris Bueller, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when he went in there to change his grade,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
it hasn't changed much.
Right.
All right. Well, we were out in Michigan in 2018 when you were running. We had a team that worked with Dick Manasiri and Philip.
Yeah, Dick is great, by the way.
He's tremendous. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were following everything you were doing. Barry Fernandez was with us. Barry just sent me a question asking if you have been in contact with the Trump legal team on this issue. And where is this going from a legal point of view? And then, Mark, you could ask your technical questions. Go ahead.
We're just assembling all the evidence, packaging it together. There's a ConOps of how everything pulled together. And for those of you not in the military, concept of operations, and it's being mapped out with the evidence mapped against it. And I'll just leave it at that for the time being. But the folks that are there, there's a lot of work going into it. They've had years, like your friend with the heist book or whatever, to assemble all this. Now we've got to deconstruct that and reassemble it in context of the evidence within a matter of weeks. And so it's tedious. And so all the lawyers, they're not techies. They don't know what SQL means, right? So there's a step-by-step process you got to go through to say, here's the evidence and here's why it's significant, if you know what I mean. And conversely, us tech guys don't necessarily understand all the legal ramifications. I'm because of my experience as a former elected official and serving election and government reform, I'm kind of a bit of a glue, if you will. I can actually help translate between both worlds, and that's kind of the role that I've been playing here of late.
Who's the legal team that's going to move, and what is their move? Where are they going once they have the case put together?
Well, when we started out, there's about, I think I got contacted by at least 8 different legal teams when it was all said and done. But now it's consolidated pretty much into, from a national level, into three groups that are tightly working together, I would submit. And that's Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Phil Klein and his group. Phil Klein was on the ground here in Michigan for months before before this whole thing started. So I helped form an organization called the Election Integrity Fund. I was certified as a poll challenger through that organization, and they've been working with the Election Integrity Fund. You'll notice before the election even started, we were filing lawsuits about breaks in the links to chain of custody up front, like in the qualified voter file and registered voters, and the basic using COVID as an excuse to subvert the election processes even before we got to November 3rd. So we were pushing that angle quite a bit through them. Also, there's a local group of lawyers in Michigan that's been phenomenal. It's Great Lakes Justice Center. My good friend David Coleman and also William Wagner, they head up that organization, and they're the ones who defended Carl Mankey, the barber in Owasso, you may have heard about here in Michigan. Yeah. And they're a tip of the spear locally for a lot of the state actions that we're filing here. So think of the DC legal team as focusing on the federal strategy, because there's a lot of commonality between what's happening in Michigan, what's going on in Georgia, what's going on in Pennsylvania, what's going on in Arizona and Wisconsin. It's amazing how similar. And without getting too geeky, let's just say the data analysis of what happened in each of these different areas, it's almost the identical approach that was taken in every one of these battleground states.
Unbelievable. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're missing some phenomenal information. 9:45 in the morning. Tom Trento, your host with Jay Mark here. Susie Gold. This could be a 3-hour show easily really with Patrick. But Mark, you had some questions.
Well, I can safely say he's one of the tentacles on the Kraken, it sounds like.
The Kraken.
That's why this sucks so bad. All right. All right.
I got to now. This is goes to intent on this question, and it's a tech question, but on intent. Anybody who's even the first year IT person, you don't even have to really understand this, but layman can understand this. If you don't connect your PC to the internet, nobody can get into it. Everybody's experienced that.
Yep, it's called an air gap. Yep,
the air gap, right? And it breaks the chain.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
they broke the chain everywhere else. Why couldn't they have done it here?
Right. No, my point is, for intent, even the people who run these systems know that air gap. No, 100%, 1,000%. Do not do this. Do not do this. Do not push this switch. It's big red switch. Do not turn this on. Yeah. Why would they turn it on, other than the intent to defraud?
That's exactly why I wanted to get them on record, even though I knew it was connected. That's exactly why I asked them that question. You're right. And by the way, one of the people up on that center stage at that local data center for a control station for the Detroit AV County Board was one of the owners of Dominion Voting Systems.
Wow.
And another part about, you said there's a Wi-Fi connection there, right?
Yes.
And you were able to pull it on up 4 bars inside your iPhone.
Yeah. I could pull up connections to what was happening inside the AV County Board from outside the AV County Board, which is another concern.
Now, was there a password or anything like that on that thing?
Oh, I mean, you with the right tool, you can.
Well, I'm just, but there was at least a password, right?
Well, I never even checked if it had the little lock symbol on it. I assumed it did. All right. I've got a picture of it, so.
Just that alone, and anybody, especially if you have the password, which they probably did.
Have the password.
Okay, it really doesn't matter. But if your intent to break into the stuff, that's very easily to do with a Wi-Fi connection connected to the voting system. That's insane.
Well, it raises this question.
Why would you do that?
If and when this gets to a trier of fact, and the individual who was responsible is asked the question that Mark just asked, why did you connect this to the internet? What BS answer are they going to give?
They probably said that they had a firewall that was between the computers that were connected to the internet and those that were not. Right, I know they'll say that. I'm just saying it was a hardware firewall that they talk about as a feature of their network configurations. But anybody who knows anything about firewalls means that it's nice, but if you got a big enough fire, it's going to get through.
That's right.
Big enough ladder, you can go over the
You
wall.
know,
yeah.
Patrick, what I look at is I say, okay, well, we have our short-term goals and then we have long-term goals. And that's the way I see it in my mind, is that short-term, we want to know the integrity of this election. And we know that there were so many breaches and so many people were complicit in ensuring that they would be successful in making sure that this was not legal. So short term, we say, well, who won this election? And long term, we want to make sure we don't repeat this again in the future.
Right.
And that we have, that we hold our elections in a way that would be appropriate for democracy. So what do you see in terms of our short term and in terms of how, there's a lot of work that needs to be
What
done.
a mess, man.
Yeah. Where are we? Like, do we have enough time to know, like within, we're talking about 2 or 3 weeks away that, would be the electoral vote.
For a lot of the down ballot folks that got potentially had their votes stolen in this election, there's not much hope, frankly, at this point in time, unless you do a complete revote of these states, which is still possible via a court order. So don't dismiss that possibility. When this fraud comes out to the extent that I believe it should be displayed, there is definitely going to be grounds for a revote. But the more practical case, I guess, is before December 14th. That's when the electors are getting assigned, right? So that's the time between now and December 14th is when we got to make sufficient case so that this may actually get to the point where it's a 12th Amendment discussion at the U.S. Congress. And just for those of you not aware of what happens with that, if the results of the election for president are not clear at that point in time, specifically, I think it says in the 12th Amendment if it's tied, but we won't get into all the details around the specifics on that. But ultimately, if it's not decided, it's U.S. House of Representatives that decides who the next president is. And before everybody gets nervous because we have a Speaker Pelosi there, instead of 435 votes in this case, each state only gets 1 vote, which means that it's a function of essentially Republican delegations, if you will, with the majority Republicans versus the majority Democrats. And the Republicans hold a 26 to 24 seat advantage when it comes to that and choosing the next president. So if it goes to the 12th Amendment, it's the U.S. House by state that gets 1 vote that picks the next president. But that approach still doesn't help all the folks down ballot. Like we have the Senate race in Georgia, we have the Senate race in Michigan that frankly, from the numbers that I've seen, the number of votes that they stole and switched and flipped, all those races would be in play. Frankly, a lot of the House races down even further on the ballot would be in play. And we may not even have a Speaker Pelosi if the real votes were actually counted. So there's a lot left to go on this. Now, the long-term fix, I'll tell you, when I was in the Senate, in the wake of that 2016 election, we had Republicans in control of the House and the Senate. I was vice chair with a Republican chair of the Michigan Senate that refused to give me a hearing on election integrity and go through what I did is a failure modes and effects analysis. I identified all the vulnerabilities, and I want to walk through them systematically and map our current statute against all those vulnerabilities to see if there's anything we can do to batten down the hatches. And they refused to give me a hearing on it.
Wow.
And
that's a Republican legislature, right?
Yes. And so I think, Republicans are engaged in this as well. I mean, the first instance of a vote flipping tool was actually by a Republican congressman in Florida, if I remember correctly. And so I don't want anybody doing this. I want a high integrity election. I'll tell you, I'm working with Democrats. I'm working with Bernie supporters, which I don't even classify officially as Democrats. I'm working with Rhino Republicans, establishment Republicans. We're all working together. Anybody who's interested in America and wants a high integrity election, I'm willing to work with them, and we are working with folks like that. So the long-term solution is you gotta come together and be serious about fixing these holes. And frankly, one key ingredient of any long-term fix is get off the internet, get off these automated machines, get into purple finger mode here for a while until we can get our act together.
Patrick, go old school.
Quick question.
Hang on.
Well,
hang on 1 second.
Well, it's about the software. If you get a hold of it, that's all.
You're working with all these different groups. Has any of the major news outlets, ABC, CBS, any of these people sat down with you and said, hey, you got something here. I want to talk to you about this?
Fox Business News with Lou Dobbs, but on him, we're going to be on probably again tomorrow afternoon. But it's mostly the folks like Gateway Pundit and Epic Times and yourself and America's Voice. So it's nothing really mainstream yet, if you will, which, kind of goes to the fact that leading up to this, the censorship's been palpable at all levels on getting the truth out about how this was being teed up. Your friend's book, The Heist. I mean,
Right.
You think that would have been talked about? You think it'd be talked about right now, right?
Right.
So, but nobody's talking about it. And I talk about what are early on leading up into this. I said, I believe that what we're seeing with this whole COVID blackout and all the policies, particularly in Michigan, that we've seen coming out of COVID, it has all the appearances of what I would submit as an attempted coup.
Right.
Because what's the first thing you do in a coup? You take over all the communication pathways, you take over the media. And then what's happening in Michigan, even for Thanksgiving, they're telling you can't assemble. So you can't get together and share the truth physically or anything, or can't get together and share information. And then they go off and put forward a bunch of unlawful dictates. Well, it took 6 months for our Michigan Supreme Court to turn down what we've been saying is unlawful for a long time with our governor. So this is time for people to stand up and recognize that these guys do not have our best interests. This is not the typical Republican versus Democrat election here, where it's we're just quibbling over different policy discussions. No, there are people that seriously want to fundamentally transform America. Right. And they are being successful at it right now. They are being successful, and it's up to the rest of us to fundamentally preserve all that is noble and true and excellent and praiseworthy about America. If we don't stand up now, I'll tell you, I've been behind the Iron Curtain. I worked with the Russians on the International Space Station. I was out there. I was there in Germany when they did reunification. I was in East Germany at the time. I've seen Berlin. I've been at the Berlin Wall. We do not want to go down that path. And that's where these people are trying to lead us. And I'm leaving it all on the field, and we're not going to let these guys get away with it.
All right, Patrick.
I have about 30 seconds. I want to ask you an important question here. Software. Were you able to get hold of the software because they're running around apparently doing software patch updates at the last second? Do you have the latest software in your possession, or does someone have that software in their possession?
I am not at liberty to discuss that point, but
that's a highly critical piece of information.
I think he knows that.
I agree.
He knows that. Patrick, you are doing the Lord's work. Let's give him a round of applause.
Yes.
Hang in
Thank
there.
God for Patrick.
You got to stay safe. There's crazy people out there. Whatever we can do to help, we're here. We got to get to the bottom of this. And what we're doing here is we're focusing in on Georgia. We got to get those two people elected, good people. But we're not giving up here. We're investigating, exposing. At the end of this, we want to show, as you are, there's a problem and it needs to be corrected. And maybe it's old school.
Right.
We go back to a
that's
piece of
the way-
paper and put it in a box and count it. you know?
Patrick,
All right, Patrick, you got 30 seconds. Your closing thought for all our listeners and all of America.
Patrick the Kraken Colbeck, give us your last words.
All right. First of all, everybody keep the faith. Joe Biden is not the president-elect, so turn off all those media stations that are trying to push that propaganda down your throat. I will give you hope as well. Initially, remember, the media was pushing the narrative that there is no voter fraud. Then they said there's no rampant voter fraud. Then they said there's no rampant voter fraud that's sufficient to overturn the election. So their next headline is going to be Donald Trump gets reelected to 4 more years, right?
All right.
All right.
So keep the faith, everybody. We got a lot to be thankful for. We live in the greatest nation that this world has ever seen. And I'm still optimistic that we're going to turn this around. But you know how it's going to be done? It's going to be by individual people standing up and saying, I want my liberty. I want to maintain it. I love this country, and we're not going to let it go.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, Patrick
Great
Colbeck.
close.
Thank
Wow.
you very, very much. Hey, ladies
Great
and gentlemen.
interview.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so
Take it
much.
easy.
Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Great show. What a
Yeah,
great guest.
That was